Hello, welcome to this presentation on linguistic knowledge for identifying potential terms. So we're going to start with a discussion of the chapter Corpus, Linguistics, and Terminology Extraction by Khurshid Ahmad and Margaret Rogers. In that chapter, Ahmad and Rogers note that where tools are strong on counting, that is producing terminology lists based on statistical analysis of linguistic patterns, they are weak on knowledge of the linguistic and domain sort, precisely the knowledge that human terminologists have. That is to say that software applications cannot replace human practitioners. Software applications like terminology extractors aid professionals who are aware of how to leverage tools to achieve the best results. In terminology management, our goal is not only to identify terms of special usage to a particular domain, we must also establish a single definitive meaning for those terms. As discussed in Frank Knowles' chapter, Lexical Cartography in Language for Special Purposes, specialized terms are identified and definitive meanings for those terms are instantiated through big data corpora. Computer-assisted corpus linguistic tools make possible not just the large-scale extraction of terminology. A variety of powerful applications and tools also make possible the large-scale capture and analysis of terminological data, including grammatical information, context, and patterns of collocation. According to Ahmad and Rogers, the processing of large quantities of texts may allow patterns to emerge that are probabilistic in nature and are unlikely to be detected by a manual human screening. So automatic terminology extractors are a type of tool that makes terminologists more powerful. Ahmad and Rogers identify three classes of vocabulary that are drawn upon in the creation of a special language discourse. So broadly, these are the types of classes of vocabulary that we need to be aware of and looking for when we are looking for terminology and automatic terminology extraction results as terminologists. These include 1, words in general language, 2, terminologies from other domains, and 3, coinages, or to get technical, lexical items not found in either general language or other special languages. Juan C. Sager, a founding scholar of terminology studies, defines term formation as the process of naming the concepts required by a particular special language community for the development of cognitive processes and communication. In term formation, absolute invention, just inventing from thin air a new term, is very rare. As Sager notes, term formation is highly pragmatic, it's highly situational. The mode elected when new terms are formed depends on the subject area, the people involved in concept formation, and why the new term is needed. To form new terms, models for term formation from the specific subject field are relied upon. That is, terms are formed based on the preferred patterns communicated in existing nomenclatures and standards, and they're also based upon linguistic structures. So terms are not formed within a void without taking into consideration context. As with translation work, terminology work is highly contextual. Creating new terms that fit with the existing linguistic patterns of a domain has the aim of transparency for target users. And I quote from Sager, "Readers are assumed to have a better grasp of the meaning of a term if they can recognize the conceptual structure of a complex concept through the patterns used to combine lexical elements." So terms are formed in response to two sets of circumstances per Sager. Primary formation is spontaneous in nature and results from the invention of a concept and the related concept system in a linguistic space in which there was previously a void, such as when entirely new technologies, products, and services are invented. Secondary formation is based upon the precedent of existing term structures. So under this model, new terms conform to the motivations and objectives of the structures that are already in place. Secondary formation can include when we carry out monolingual revisions of terminologies in order to harmonize and standardize use, or when we're transferring knowledge systems, entire knowledge systems from one linguistic community to another, or a community of people who speak a language. Sager's work, it's important to note, acknowledges the liquidity of language, the nature of evolution of language. Sager notes the terminology and language surrounding the introduction of a new concept system into an ecosystem takes time to stabilize. This idea of introduction and stabilization has political implications for any massive terminology transfers into linguistic vacuums. Conceptual mapping of meaning is how we as humans make sense of the world around us. Language and concept structures are inextricably tied. So when we import terminologies alongside their related technologies into so-called developing countries, for example, this may at once represent the opportunity to widen the linguistic means of expression of the language of that country through the introduction of foreign language terminology. This widening can be quickly achieved as well through borrowing terms from the culture that is exporting the technology and the terminology into the receiving culture and society. On the other hand, concepts are more easily mapped and digested against known language structures, in which case, if we import foreign language terminologies into mother language of a community of speakers, that also represents a great hurdle in understanding for that community of speakers. Regardless of the model, providing guidelines on the language structures used within terminologies is the proper concern of terminologists. Sager identifies three mechanisms for term formation: neologisms, terminologization, and modification. For neologism, sometimes new terms are created through the invention of entirely new words, though this again is very rare. Neologisms can be completely new terms like byte, B-Y-T-E, in the field of information technology, or terms borrowed from other languages, loan translations, calcs, things of that nature. Second, terminologization. Sometimes words that already exist are used, and the meaning of the word is extended from its original meaning to take on a more specialized meaning. Examples of this would be the words cloud and mouse from, again, the field of information technology. This process is called terminologization, and another method of terminologization would be when similes and metaphors like V-shaped and pudding-like are used. Finally, modification. Sometimes words that already exist are modified through derivation and affixation, the use of prefixes and suffixes, compounding, the creation of phrasal verbs, compression, and conversion, where a word from one class is used as if it were from another class. A very interesting example of conversion is the use of the preposition at in the Twitter sphere as a verb, as in somebody added me in a tweet. It's a super interesting conversion because typically a preposition would not would not become a term and would not take on the purpose of a verb. There are two types of terms: simple terms and complex terms. Simple terms are single lexical units. Translation and localization are examples of simple terms. Complex terms consist of two or more lexical elements. Complex terms are formed through compounding, adding prefixes or suffixes to existing words, juxtaposition, and phrasal units which add articles and prepositions to terms. So when reviewing automatic terminology extraction results, we look for both simple terms and complex terms. Some examples of complex terms would be computer-assisted translation, pseudo-translate, 100% match, etc. This idea of complex nouns or compound nouns warrants further discussion due to the complex nature of complex nouns. In compound nouns, the first element is said to determine the final element, which is known as the nucleus of the compound. So in the phrase complex noun, noun would be our nucleus, complex would be a determiner for the word noun. Determiners clarify the type or classification of the nucleus by making characteristics more evident. To differentiate the concept in question from other concepts sharing the same nucleus, determiners add information about materials like wooden peg, use, rock tunneling machine, etc. The tricky thing about compounding is that a compound noun can be used in a new combination to form terms that represent more specific concepts and longer compound nouns. A compound noun can be used either as a determiner or the nucleus of a much longer compound noun. This becomes really tricky to unpack in terminology management. In the example here, you can see the phrase complex noun, where complex determined the nucleus noun can become the nucleus of a much larger phrase, closed form complex noun, where then closed form becomes the determiner for complex noun, adding more specific information to communicate and name a type of a complex noun. To form closed form complex nouns, we meld two words together into a single term, like keyboard. Closed form complex nouns are distinguished from hyphenated complex nouns, about antifreeze, an example of that, and open form complex nouns. Returning back to corpus linguistics and terminology extraction by Khurshid Ahmad and Margaret Rogers, in the chapter, the authors highlight three types of patterns that can be looked for to identify terms: mother terms, lemmatization, and collocations. Mother terms are particularly productive words that have the potential to combine with others to form compounds and to produce derivational forms. That definition is from Ahmad and Rogers. And mother terms can be used both within and across domains. Mother terms are identified by frequency counts, how often a single word appears in a corpus, and within a subject matter domain, to be more specific. Examples of this would be virus within the field of microbiology. An example of a combination that is derived from that mother term would be coronavirus. Within the field of IT, we might see something like antivirus detection. In the paper Automatic Recognition of Multi-Word Terms, Francie et al. State that nested terms, noun clusters within larger noun clusters, can also be looked for when we're looking for mother terms and for terminology, since nested terms that are used with a high frequency are very likely terms. Moving on to lemmatization. Lemmatization is the grouping of, and I quote, morphologically variant forms of the same lexeme reduced to their canonical form. So this would be taking the words am, are, and is from the verb to be, conjugations of the verb to be. Taking lemmatization into account helps to establish the frequency of terms within a corpus or within a specialized domain. And when you're trying to take lemmatization into account, you should look for number and case for nouns, gender, number and case for adjectives, and person, number, and tense for verbs. Collocations are the neighborhood of a term. Collocations can be used to identify compound terms and to clarify meaning, but careful because collocations are easily mistaken for terms. A collocation is just essentially the words that are used together, that appear together within writing. When you're trying to determine whether what you're looking at is a collocation or if the elements that you're looking at are actually a part of a term, take this into account. Where there is a very limited range of qualifiers which can be used with a bona fide term, like heat transfer, the word heat wave can be modified by many hyperbolic expressions like suffocating or never ending, and a great number of other qualifiers. Extended term units are linguistic representations of essential characteristics. So you can't take the word away. If you take the word away, the term for the concept is no longer a term for a concept. Whereas extended word units, collocations of words that just happen to appear together frequently, are not essential. So you can omit those adjectives and nouns connected with compound nouns, and the meaning of the core word or phrase does not change. That concludes this presentation on linguistic knowledge for identifying potential terms.